Hi, my name is Elizabeth Dilling. This presentation will discuss the effects of a 24-hour physical activity intervention versus health education on cognitive outcomes in sedentary older adults. This was a randomized clinical trial determining if a 24-month physical activity program would result in improved cognitive function, lower risk for cognitive impairment or dementia as compared to a group who participated in a health education program. The study population included participants from ages 70 to 89 who were well educated and mobile. The results revealed were contrary to the hypothesis, showing that the moderate intensity physical activity program did not result in improvements for global or domain-specific cognitive function as compared to the health education program. When checking for confirmability, I want to check if the evidence available confirms the conclusions. First, for this study, the study methods are clearly and adequately described, and the study data has been retained and is available for reanalysis. This was a single-blinded RCT of a physical activity intervention compared to a health education control group. Tables and figures are used to provide the data. The data presented supports the conclusions. Participants were randomly assigned using a secure web-based management system to avoid bias. However, the recruiting was done through mass mailings, radio and television ads, and etc., leading to a potential for bias in selection of the study population. Competing conclusions were considered in that the alternative hypothesis, which says that cognitive and social stimulation have also been shown to preserve cognitive function, and that this could have led to the reasoning behind the lack of variation between groups. Additionally, other studies that counter the hypothesis for this study were mentioned, including information that previous studies had found no changes in cognitive function. These counter the current hypothesis, which projects a change in cognitive function due to an increase in physical activity. It was noted that previous studies did not have a large enough sample size and were not a long enough duration. When considering internal validity, the accuracy of the quantitative data is of concern. Data was monitored by a Data and Safety Monitoring Board appointed by the National Institutes of Health. Triangulation is a common way to evaluate validity. To evaluate triangulation for the internal validity, this study did not draw information from different sources or through different means of investigation. Cognitive assessments were only done through computerized testing. Additionally, when it comes to reporting data for the participants, this was all self-reported, potentially leading to recall bias or distortion during the recall process. Due to the fact that the exercise data was being self-reported, this too can lead to questions and participants being honest and accurate in their exercise tracking. Lastly, another factor to consider in this program is maturation, because this took place over a period of time with older adults whose memory changed naturally over time. This factor is important to consider. The study did not consider these changes or measures for the changes in brain volume which could affect aging adults. Overall, when asking if the design of this project or the implementation could lead to wrong conclusions, then the data collection in this project would be an indicator of issues with the internal validity. To assess external validity, it must be considered if this program is transferable. If the program is replicated, would the results be similar? Because in this program, there was not observed improvements in cognitive function between the exercise group and the control group, then the program would need to be evaluated to ensure that this would likely be the result when implemented again. The descriptions do include findings that are consistent with other smaller studies in order to assess the potential of transferability. There is an adequate description of the sample characteristics, including the age range and specific protocols for which the samples were collected. Overall, the findings have been replicated in smaller studies, but two larger pilot studies, the LIFE study and the Lifestyles Intervention studies, showed correlations between physical activity and cognitive performance to support the hypothesis, but did not support the overall findings of this study. It was mentioned that the LIFE study had a population of almost 10 years younger and only lasted 12 months. This leads to questions in regards to the external validity of the study due to the mixed results from previous studies provided. Also, the study included well-educated adults, which is limiting to the older adult population as a whole. Next, when considering threats to statistical conclusion validity, statistical design and analysis procedures must be evaluated. Questions to ask include considerations of the study population size, if assumptions of statistical tests have been violated, and if information is collected from the right people. The population for this study included a total of 1,635 participants from February 2010 to December 2011. The final analysis was limited, however, to 1,476 participants. Additionally, there were more Black participants in the physical activity group as compared to the health education group. The median attendance in the physical activity sessions was 71% excluding medical leave. There was no information about attendance of the health education classes included. These variations in population and the information collected from the limited people may call into question the statistical validity. If it is also assumed from the description of the methods for getting participants and from the population description that the intervention and comparison groups do cover the same populations. The groups were randomly selected and placed in a specific group from the larger sample size of people. There were several limitations of this study when assessing the constructs. First, the physical activity was self-reported, and therefore, because this was the only method of data collection for this outcome, participants could have potentially assessed themselves in a way in which they thought they should be assessed for being in an exercise group. Also, both the control group and the physical activity group participated in activities which both could affect cognitive function, versus if the control group had not participated in activities at all. The components of the health education intervention included both cognitive and social components which could have prevented cognitive decline in the group, making the impacts in the study group incorrect. Lastly, the study was too short to consider dementia and to know if it affected outcomes. Also, the physical activity levels may have increased in the exercise group, but still may have been insufficient to produce the outcomes of the cognitive effects that were expected. When considering the utilization of the findings from this study, it should be considered if the findings provide guidance for future actions and how useful the findings were. Overall, the findings did not show improvements in cognitive function when comparing these two groups. However, it was reported that there was an increase in physical activity among the study group, showing that users of the program may have developed new habits or ways to improve their health, just not consistent with the expected outcomes from the program. There is no ethical concerns presented, but the actions taken did not seem to help solve any problems or have any sufficient influence on future studies. In conclusion, two of the most serious problems with this RCT is that the control group also participated in activities which could influence cognitive function, and that this study only included well-educated adults which may already have higher cognitive function. Additionally, the time period in which the study took place was relatively short when considering cognitive function. The study did not account for maturation and naturally occurring health effects on cognitive function due to aging. The life study used as a pilot study for this study did show improvement in cognitive function, studied a group of adults that were 10 years younger than the study group. However, it was noted that the study was only a year long. Had this study started when participants were younger and followed them into older adulthood, maybe the expected outcomes would have been demonstrated. Additionally, the study population was limited and could have been more diverse, including a population which was more cognitively vulnerable. Lastly, the control group should not have participated in activities which could have affected cognitive function if the intervention wanted to ultimately assess the effects of physical activity on cognitive function. This is the reference for the article which presented the study. Thank you for listening.